Sophia Hartwell slammed the $100,000 check onto Jack's chest so hard it wrinkled against his grease-stained shirt. "Take it and get out," she hissed, "before I have security drag you out like the nobody you are." Every mechanic in that hangar froze. Every billionaire associate held their breath. But Jack Reynolds, a black single dad from Newark who drove a rusted Civic and carried a toolbox held together with duct tape, he didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He looked Sophia dead in the eyes and tore that check in half. What happened next changed both their lives forever. But you won't believe how they got here. Stay until the end and drop a comment with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. If you're new here, hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss the next parts. Jack Reynolds was underneath a 2004 Ford Explorer when his phone buzzed in his back pocket for the 6th time. He didn't reach for it. Couldn't. His hands were deep inside the transmission housing, feeling for the crack he already knew was there. The owner, a 72-year-old retired bus driver named Earl, was sitting on a plastic chair outside the garage bay, sipping coffee from a styrofoam cup, watching Jack's boots stick out from under the truck like he was watching surgery. "That phone's been going crazy, Jack," Earl said. "It'll keep," Jack said. "Might be important. This is important. You need this truck, Earl." Earl went quiet after that. He knew better than to argue with Jack Reynolds when Jack Reynolds was working. The phone buzzed a 7th time. Then an 8th. Jack's hands found the crack. He traced it with his fingertip, measuring it by touch the way his father had taught him 30 years ago. 1/4 inch. Clean fracture. Fixable. "Hand me the JB weld and the clamp. Top shelf, red bin," Jack called out. Earl didn't move fast, but he moved steady. He set the supplies next to Jack's boots. "You sure you don't want to check that phone? Could be Maya's school." That got Jack's attention. He rolled out from under the Explorer, wiped his hands on a rag that was more oil than cloth, and pulled the phone from his pocket. 11 missed calls, all from the same number. A 212 area code he didn't recognize. And one text message. "Jack, this is Curtis. I know we haven't talked in years. I need you at Teterboro Airport in 2 hours. A private jet. Gulfstream G700. Nobody else can fix it. I'm not exaggerating. Please, call me back." Jack stared at the message. Curtis Whitmore. They'd served together in the Navy, worked on F/A-18 engine systems on the USS Eisenhower. Curtis had gone private sector after discharge. Corporate aviation, executive maintenance contracts. Big money. They'd lost touch the way men do when life pulls them in different directions. Jack typed back, "I'm in the middle of a job." Curtis replied in 4 seconds, "Jack, they've had 3 teams look at this aircraft. Rolls-Royce sent engineers. Nobody can figure it out. The owner is losing her mind. I told them I know a guy. You're the guy." Jack looked at Earl's truck, looked at the phone, looked at Earl. "Earl, I gotta step out for a bit. I'll finish your truck tonight. No charge for the wait." Earl waved him off. "Boy, go on. I ain't going nowhere." Jack grabbed his toolbox, a scarred, dented thing his father had given him the day he turned 18. The latch was broken, held shut with gray duct tape. Inside, every tool was spotless, organized, sharpened. The outside of a man doesn't tell you what he carries. Jack's father had said that once. Jack never forgot it. He climbed into his Civic. The car was 21 years old, the paint oxidized to a chalky blue, the exhaust loud enough to announce him 3 blocks before he arrived. He turned the key. The engine caught on the 2nd try. He pulled out of the garage lot and headed for Teterboro. Teterboro Airport. Private aviation. The kind of place where the cars in the parking lot cost more than Jack's house. Jack pulled his Civic between a black Escalade and a white Bentley. The exhaust popped twice when he killed the engine. A ground crew worker in a crisp uniform looked at the Civic, then at Jack, then back at the Civic like he was trying to solve a math problem that didn't add up. Jack got out, grabbed his toolbox, and walked toward the main hangar. Curtis was waiting at the entrance. He looked exactly the same, stocky, bald, nervous energy coming off him like static electricity. He grabbed Jack's hand and shook it hard. "Thank God you're here." "What's the situation?" "Total electrical failure. The G700 went dark 3 days ago. Full avionics blackout. No start. No diagnostics. Rolls-Royce sent a team from Indianapolis. They spent 2 days and found nothing." "The owner's got a meeting tomorrow in London that's worth, I don't even know, hundreds of millions. Maybe more. If that jet doesn't fly by morning, people lose their jobs. A lot of people." "Who's the owner?" Curtis hesitated. "Sophia Hartwell." Jack knew the name. Everyone knew the name. Sophia Hartwell, founder and CEO of Hartwell Technologies. Forbes list, magazine covers, the kind of woman who moved markets with a single phone call. "She's inside," Curtis said. "And Jack, she's not in a good mood." "I didn't come here for her mood. I came because you asked." Curtis led him into the hangar. It was massive. Cathedral ceilings, polished concrete floor, halogen lights bright enough to perform surgery under. And there, in the center, sat the Gulfstream G700. $90 million of aircraft, sleek and white, and completely, utterly dead. Around the jets to the small army, engineers in company polos, technicians with laptops, 2 men in suits who looked like lawyers, and at the center of it all, pacing with a phone pressed to her ear, was Sophia Hartwell. She was mid-conversation, and her voice carried across the hangar like a whip crack. "I don't care what they said, Richard. I don't care about their timeline. I need this aircraft operational in 12 hours, or I'm pulling the entire European expansion. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand what's at stake?" She ended the call without saying goodbye, turned to one of the engineers. "Well?" The engineer, a tall man with Rolls-Royce stitched on his shirt, shifted his weight. "Ms. Hartwell, we've run every diagnostic protocol available. The system isn't responding. We believe it could be a fault in the integrated modular avionics. But without being able to boot the system, we can't isolate, so you're telling me you can't fix it." "I'm telling you we need more time. Time is the one thing I don't have." That's when she noticed Jack. He was standing near the hangar door, toolbox in hand, wearing work boots and a faded navy blue jacket with an oil stain on the left sleeve. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who worked with his hands for a living. Sophia looked at Curtis. "Who is this?" "This is Jack Reynolds. He's what, a mechanic?" "He's the best aircraft technician I've ever worked with. We served together. He knows engine systems better than anyone I've—" Sophia held up her hand. Curtis stopped talking. She walked toward Jack. Slowly, every step deliberate. She stopped 3 feet in front of him and looked him up and down with an expression that Jack had seen before, 100 times, in 100 different rooms. The look that measured a man by what he wore, what he drove, what he appeared to be. "You drove here in that?" She pointed toward the parking lot, toward the Civic, though she couldn't have possibly seen it from inside the hangar. Someone must have told her, or maybe she just knew. People like Sophia always knew. "Yes, ma'am. And that's your toolbox." "It is. It's held together with tape. The tools inside aren't." A murmur rippled through the hangar. One of the suited men smirked. One of the Rolls-Royce engineers folded his arms. Sophia tilted her head. "Mr. Reynolds, I've had a team of 12 engineers with a combined 200 years of experience work on this aircraft for 3 days. Rolls-Royce, the people who built the engines, sent their best. And you're telling me you think you can walk in here with a duct-tape toolbox and do what they couldn't?" "I'm not telling you anything yet. I haven't looked at the jet." "Then let me be clear." Sophia reached into her jacket and pulled out a checkbook. She wrote something, tore the check free, and held it out. $100,000. "You fix this jet, this is yours. You fail." She paused, looked around the hangar, making sure everyone was listening. "You get on your knees in front of every person in this room and apologize for wasting my time." The hangar went dead silent. Jack looked at the check. He didn't take it. "I don't want your money, Miss Harwell." "Excuse me?" "I said, I don't want your money. Curtis called me because he needed help. That's why I'm here. I fix things. That's what I do. I don't need a reward for doing what I'm good at. And I definitely don't kneel for anyone." Sophia blinked. It was the smallest reaction, but Jack caught it. She wasn't used to being refused. "Everyone kneels for something, Mr. Reynolds." "Not me. Not today." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she stepped aside and gestured toward the jet. "Then by all means, show me what a man with a duct-tape toolbox can do with a $90 million aircraft." Jack walked past her without another word. He started at the nose of the aircraft and worked his way back, running his hand along the fuselage like a doctor checking a patient's pulse. The Rolls-Royce team watched him with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "He's not even using a diagnostic interface," one of them muttered. "What's he doing? Feeling the airplane?" another one whispered. Jack ignored them. He'd learned a long time ago that the people who talked the most usually knew the least. He climbed into the cockpit. Dead screens. Dead panels. The aircraft was a ghost. He sat in the pilot's seat and closed his eyes. Not because he was thinking, because he was listening. Listening to the silence. Listening for what wasn't there. Then he opened the floor access panel beneath the center console. He lowered himself into the avionics bay, the belly of the beast, where 1,000 wires and circuit boards lived in organized chaos. Most mechanics hated this space. It was cramped, dark, tangled. Jack loved it. This was where aircraft talked to you, if you knew how to listen. He pulled a flashlight from his jacket pocket and began tracing wire harnesses. Not randomly, systematically, the way his father had taught him to troubleshoot an engine on a '68 Camaro when he was 11 years old. Start at the source. Follow the current. Trust your hands. 20 minutes passed. The Rolls-Royce team shifted uncomfortably. Sophia checked her phone. Curtis paced near the hangar door. Then Jack found it. A connector, buried deep in the secondary power distribution bus. It looked fine from the outside. No visible damage, no corrosion, no burn marks. But when Jack pressed it with his thumb, he felt it. The slightest give. A fraction of a millimeter of play where there should have been 0. He pulled the connector apart. The pin inside, a tiny gold-plated contact no bigger than a grain of rice, had developed a microfracture. Invisible to the naked eye. Invisible to diagnostic software, but enough to break the circuit that powered the entire integrated avionics system. Jack reached into his toolbox and pulled out a contact pin kit. He selected the right gauge, crimped a new pin, seated it, and reassembled the connector. His hands moved with the precision of a surgeon and the calm of a man who had done this 10,000 times before. He climbed out of the avionics bay, sat back in the pilot's seat, and pressed the master power switch. Nothing happened. He waited 3 seconds. Pressed it again. The cockpit lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Every screen, every gauge, every system. The Gulfstream G700 came alive with a low, powerful hum that vibrated through the entire aircraft. Navigation, communications, flight management, engine controls. All of it, flooding back in a cascade of green indicators and system confirmations. Jack pressed the engine start sequence. The first Rolls-Royce Pearl 700 engine spooled up with a rising whine that filled the hangar. Then the second. The sound was enormous, deep, resonant, alive. The aircraft was shaking with power, and the ground crew outside scrambled to reposition as the exhaust wash swept across the tarmac. Jack shut the engines down, powered the systems to standby, and climbed out of the cockpit. The hangar was completely silent. The Rolls-Royce engineers stared at him. The suited men stared at him. Curtis was grinning so wide it looked like his face might split. And Sophia Hartwell was standing exactly where he'd left her, the check still in her hand, her expression unreadable. Jack walked toward her. He stopped. He looked at the check. "I told you," he said quietly. "I don't want your money." Sophia's jaw tightened.
How did you... My team spent 3 days...
Your team relied on software. Software can't feel a bad pin. Human hands can. That's not a knock on them. It's just a different language. What was wrong with it? Microfracture in a contact pin on the secondary power distribution bus. It passed every diagnostic because the break was intermittent. Just enough contact to fool the sensors, not enough to carry the load. Under thermal cycling, the gap widened. The system read it as a cascading failure. It wasn't. It was one pin, one grain of rice. Sophia looked at the check in her hand. She held it out again. "Take it. You earned it." Jack shook his head. "I didn't come here to earn anything. I came because Curtis said someone needed help. That's enough. That's not how the world works, Mr. Reynolds. Maybe not your world." The words hung in the air between them. Sophia's eyes narrowed, but it wasn't anger this time. It was something else, something she hadn't felt in a very long time, and it unsettled her because she couldn't name it. "You turned down $100,000, she said slowly. "I did."
Why?
Jack looked at her, really looked at her, past the expensive clothes and the power and the controlled expression. "Because some things aren't for sale, Miss Hartwell. Respect, integrity, a man's word. You offered me money. What I wanted was for you to see me, not my car, not my toolbox, not what you thought I was when I walked through that door. Me." Sophia didn't respond. Jack reached out and took the check from her hand. Slowly, deliberately, he tore it in half, then in half again. He let the pieces fall to the polished concrete floor. "Your jet's fixed. Your meeting saved. That's what I came here to do." He picked up his toolbox and turned toward the door.
Mr. Reynolds,
He stopped.
who taught you to do that? To listen to an aircraft like that?
Jack was quiet for a moment. "My father. He was a mechanic too. He couldn't afford fancy tools or computer systems, so he taught me to use these." He held up his hands. "And these still work when everything else fails." He walked out of the hangar into the cool New Jersey night, the sound of his boots echoing on the concrete. Behind him, Sophia Hartwell stood alone in a room full of people, staring at the torn pieces of a check on the floor, realizing that for the first time in as long as she could remember, she had been the smallest person in the room. And she didn't know what to do with that.
Jack got in his Civic. The engine caught on the second try, same as always. He pulled out of Teterboro, past the Bentleys and the Escalades, and headed south toward Newark. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Dad, are you coming home soon? I saved you some mac and cheese." Jack smiled. The first real smile he'd worn all day. He typed back, "On my way, baby girl. Save me a big plate." He drove. The highway stretched out ahead of him, dark and familiar. He thought about Sophia Hartwell and the look on her face when the jet came alive.
He thought about the Rolls-Royce engineers and their 200 combined years of experience. He thought about his father's hands, rough and scarred and brilliant, guiding his own hands inside an engine block when he was barely tall enough to see over the fender. And he thought about Earl's truck, still sitting in his garage with a cracked transmission housing, waiting for him to come back and finish the job. Because that's who Jack Reynolds was. He showed up. He did the work. He didn't ask for applause. He didn't ask for checks. He asked for nothing except the chance to be useful and the respect that comes from doing something well. The Civic rattled over a pothole on the turnpike. The exhaust coughed. The heater barely worked. But Jack Reynolds drove home like a king. And 600 miles behind him, in a hangar at Teterboro Airport, Sophia Hartwell made a phone call. Not to her lawyers, not to her board, not to her assistant. She called Curtis Whitmore. "Tell me everything about him," she said. Curtis paused. "Why?" "Because I think I just met the most dangerous man I've ever encountered." "Dangerous?" "He can't be bought, Curtis. In my world, that makes him the most dangerous man alive." Curtis didn't answer right away. He stood outside the hangar, phone pressed to his ear, watching the ground crew lock down the G700 for the night. The jet gleamed under the floodlights like nothing had ever been wrong with it. Like Jack Reynolds hadn't just done in 40 minutes what a dozen engineers couldn't do in 3 days. "Curtis," Sophia said again, "did you hear me?" "I heard you. I'm just trying to figure out what you mean by dangerous." "I mean what I said. A man who turns down $100,000 without blinking? That's either a fool or someone operating on a level I don't understand. And he didn't strike me as a fool." Curtis rubbed the back of his neck. "Jack's not dangerous, Sophia. He's just Jack. He's the most honest man I've ever known. That's not dangerous. That's rare. Rare is dangerous in my world. Then maybe your world has a problem." Sophia went quiet. Curtis could hear her breathing on the other end, and he knew that silence. It was the silence of a woman who wasn't used to being challenged twice in one night. "I want to see him again," she said. "For what?" "I have a proposal. He's not going to take your money, Sophia. I'm telling you that right now. It's not about money. Just set up a meeting." Curtis sighed. "I'll ask. But Jack's not the kind of man you summon. You ask him, and if he says no, that's the end of it." "Fine. Ask him." She hung up. Curtis stared at his phone for a long moment, then scrolled to Jack's number and typed a message. He deleted it. Typed another one. Deleted that too. Finally, he just called. Jack picked up on the third ring. Curtis could hear the Civic's engine rattling in the background and the faint sound of a radio playing something old. Marvin Gaye, maybe. "You home yet?" Curtis asked. 20 minutes out. What's up?" "She wants to see you again." Jack didn't respond right away. Curtis heard the turn signal clicking. "Who? Hartwell?" "Yeah." "Why?" "She says she has a proposal. I don't know what it is. She didn't tell me." "I fixed her jet, Curtis. Job's done." "I know that. I told her. She still wants to meet." "Tell her I appreciate it, but I've got a full schedule tomorrow. Earl's truck needs to be done by noon, and I promised Maya I'd pick her up from school." "Jack." "Curtis,
I'm not interested in whatever world that woman lives in. I went there tonight because you asked me to. You're my brother. That's the only reason I walked into that hangar. But that's her world, not mine. I don't belong in rooms like that, and I don't want to."
Curtis paused. He knew Jack well enough to know that when Jack said something, he meant it. But he also knew something Jack didn't. He knew the way Sophia had looked standing in that hangar after Jack left. Not angry, not humiliated. Something deeper. Something that looked, if Curtis was being honest, like a woman waking up from a very long sleep. "Just think about it," Curtis said. "That's all I'm asking. One meeting, coffee, somewhere neutral. If you don't like what she has to say, you walk away. No strings." "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." "Good night, Curtis." "Good night, Jack. And hey, you were incredible tonight. Your old man would have been proud." Jack didn't say anything for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was a little thicker. "Yeah, I hope so." He hung up. Curtis stood in the Teterboro parking lot under the cold New Jersey sky and shook his head slowly. He'd spent 20 years in corporate aviation, surrounded by billionaires and executives and people who measured everything in dollars. And the best man he'd ever known drove a rusted Civic and fixed trucks for retired bus drivers. The world was upside down. It had always been upside down. Jack got home at 11:14. The house was small, a 2-bedroom bungalow on a quiet street in Newark's Ironbound neighborhood. The porch light was on. Maya always left it on for him. He unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house smelled like butter and cheese. On the kitchen counter, covered in aluminum foil with a sticky note on top, was a plate of mac and cheese. The note read, "Dad, I use the good cheddar. Don't eat it cold. Love, Maya. P.S. I got a 94 on my history test." Jack smiled. He put the plate in the microwave, leaned against the counter, and closed his eyes while it heated. His hands ached. His back was stiff from crawling under Earl's truck and then climbing through the avionics bay of a $90 million jet in the same day. But it was a good ache, the kind that meant he'd been useful. He ate standing up, looking at the refrigerator door covered in Maya's artwork and report cards, and a photo of the two of them at the Jersey Shore from last summer. She was 14 now, growing up faster than he could keep track of. Smart, stubborn, kind. She had her mother's eyes and her father's hands, always building something, always taking things apart to see how they worked. Her mother, Denise. Gone 6 years now. Ovarian cancer. Fast and merciless. Jack had held her hand in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and watched the strongest woman he'd ever known become something fragile and small, and then become nothing at all. He'd walked out of that hospital with an 8-year-old daughter and a hole in his chest that never fully closed. He finished the mac and cheese, washed the plate, dried it, put it away. Then he walked down the hallway and opened Maya's door just enough to see her. She was asleep, one arm hanging off the bed, her history textbook open on her stomach. Jack stepped in, gently closed the textbook, set it on her nightstand, and pulled the blanket up over her shoulders. 94, he whispered. That's my girl. He kissed her forehead and closed the door. In his own room, Jack sat on the edge of the bed and pulled off his boots. His phone sat on the nightstand. He picked it up and stared at Curtis's contact. Then he opened the text thread and typed, "Fine, 1 meeting, coffee. But if she talks to me the way she talked to me tonight, I'm walking out." He sent it before he could change his mind, plugged in the phone, and turned off the light. 3 miles away,
Curtis read the message, grinned, and forwarded it to Sophia. He said yes, coffee, neutral ground. And Sophia, be human.
That's all I'm asking. Sophia read the message sitting in the back of her town car as her driver navigated the Manhattan streets toward her penthouse. Be human. She almost laughed. She'd built a $3 billion company by being anything but human. Human was weakness. Human was inefficiency. Human was Sophia Hartwell at 23, broke and desperate and sleeping on her office floor, eating ramen for dinner and crying in the bathroom where no one could see her. She hadn't been human in a very long time. She wasn't sure she remembered how. The next morning, Jack finished Earl's truck by 10:30. The transmission housing held perfectly. Earl paid him $200 in cash, 10s and 20s, folded and rubber-banded like he'd been saving them. "You're undercharging me again," Earl said. "You're overpaying me," Jack said. "Boy, you fixed a problem 3 shops told me couldn't be fixed without a new transmission. 200 ain't enough." "It's enough, Earl. Go drive your truck." Earl shook his hand with both of his, the way old men do when they want you to know they mean it. "God bless you, Jack Reynolds." He already did. He gave me Maya. Earl laughed and climbed into his Explorer. The engine purred. He pulled out of the lot waving, and Jack watched him go. At noon, Jack's phone buzzed. A text from Curtis with an address. A coffee shop in Hoboken. Neutral territory, halfway between Newark and Manhattan. 2 o'clock. Jack showered, changed into clean jeans and a button-down shirt, the nicest one he owned, a dark blue one Maya had given him for Father's Day. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. Same face, same tired eyes, same hands, scarred and calloused and permanently stained with traces of oil that no amount of soap could fully remove. "You're a mechanic from Newark," he told his reflection. "Don't forget that." He drove to Hoboken. The coffee shop was small, brick-walled, with mismatched furniture and a chalkboard menu. The kind of place where people read books and pretended to write novels. Jack got there 15 minutes early. He ordered a black coffee and sat at a table near the window. Sophia arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. No driver, no entourage. She walked in wearing jeans and a white blouse, her hair pulled back, sunglasses pushed up on her head. Without the power suit and the hangar full of employees, she looked different, smaller, more real. She spotted Jack and walked over. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "May I sit?" she asked. "It's a free country." She sat. A waitress came over. Sophia ordered an oat milk latte, then caught herself. "Actually, just a regular coffee. Black." The waitress left. Sophia folded her hands on the table. Jack noticed her fingers were bare. No rings, no jewelry, except a thin gold watch. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Curtis asked me to." "I know, and I know you didn't want to." "I didn't." "Then why did you come?" Jack took a sip of his coffee. "Because Curtis said you had something to say. And because my daughter tells me I need to stop assuming the worst about people. She's 14, and she's already smarter than me." The corner of Sophia's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "She sounds remarkable." "She is." The waitress brought Sophia's coffee. She wrapped her hands around the mug but didn't drink. "Mr. Reynolds?" "Jack." "Jack, I owe you an apology." He didn't say anything. He just looked at her and waited. "The way I spoke to you last night, the check, the demand that you kneel, the way I looked at you when you walked in, that was wrong. I knew it was wrong while I was doing it. I did it anyway. That's the worst part. I wasn't ignorant. I was cruel on purpose because I was scared. And scared people with power do ugly things."
Jack set his coffee down. What were you scared of? Losing control? That jet represented my ability to be where I needed to be when I needed to be there. When it went down, I felt powerless for the first time in years. And when you walked in looking like... She stopped herself. Looking like what? She met his eyes. Looking like someone who couldn't possibly have the answer. And I'm ashamed to say that's what I thought. I looked at your car and your toolbox and your clothes, and I made a judgment. The same kind of judgment people have made about me my entire career. A woman who couldn't possibly run a tech company. I became the very thing I've spent my life fighting against. Jack was quiet for a long time. He turned his coffee mug slowly on the table. A full rotation, then another. I appreciate you saying that, he said finally. Most people in your position wouldn't. Most people in my position don't get proven wrong that dramatically. You didn't just judge me, Ms. Hartwell. You tried to buy me. There's a difference. Judging me, that I can forgive. Everybody does it. I walk into a room, people see a black man in work boots. They make their calculations. I'm used to it. It's wrong, but I'm used to it. But the check, that was something else. That was you saying my dignity had a price. That hurt. I won't lie to you about that. Sophia's hands tightened around her mug. You're right, and I'm sorry. Genuinely sorry. Not because you fixed the jet. Not because I need something from you. Because it was wrong. Jack studied her face. He'd spent his whole life reading machines, understanding systems, diagnosing problems by feel and instinct. He was doing the same thing now, reading Sophia Hartwell the way he'd read her aircraft, looking past the surface, feeling for what was real and what was broken. Okay, he said. Okay? I accept your apology. Sophia exhaled. It was a small thing, barely noticeable, but Jack caught it. Relief. Real, unguarded relief. And he realized in that moment that Sophia Hartwell, the woman who ran a $3 billion empire, had been genuinely afraid he would say no. Now, Jack said, leaning back in his chair. Curtis said you had a proposal. What is it? Sophia took her first sip of coffee. I want to hire you. I already told you. Not like that. Listen, Hartwell Technologies is launching a new aviation division. Electric propulsion systems, hybrid engines, the future of flight. I've got the funding. I've got the engineers. I've got the technology. What I don't have is someone who understands aircraft from the inside out. Not from a computer screen, not from a textbook, but from 30 years of putting their hands on machines and knowing what's wrong by feel. Last night, you did something my entire team couldn't do. You didn't use software. You used your hands and your mind and your experience. That's not something I can hire from a headhunting firm. You want me to work for you. I want you to lead the Diagnostic and Quality Assurance Division of Hartwell Aviation. Full salary, full benefits, stock options, a team of your own. How much? $350,000 a year to start, plus equity. Jack almost laughed. He made $42,000 last year. On a good year, he made $50,000. Miss Hartwell, Sophia, I fix trucks and old cars in a garage in Newark. I don't lead divisions. I don't go to board meetings. I don't know what stock options are, and I don't care. You're asking me to be someone I'm not. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are. That's the point. I have a building full of people who know how to go to board meetings and manage stock options. I don't have a single person who can feel a microfracture in a contact pin with their thumb. You're not replacing anyone, Jack. You're filling a gap that I didn't even know existed until last night. And what happens when your board of directors sees a mechanic from Newark sitting at the table?
You think they're going to be okay with that? My board of directors answers to me, not the other way around. Jack finished his coffee. He stared at the empty mug for a long time. I need to think about it. Take all the time you need. And I need you to understand something. If I do this, and I'm not saying I will, I don't change who I am. I don't wear suits. I don't play politics. I don't smile at people I don't respect. And the first time someone in your company talks to me the way you talked to me last night, I walk. No conversation, no second chance. I walk. Fair. And Maya comes first. Always. If she needs me, I'm gone. No questions, no guilt, no performance reviews. My daughter is not negotiable. I wouldn't expect her to be. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, Hoboken moved at its usual pace. People walking dogs, couples pushing strollers, a man on a bicycle weaving through traffic. Normal life. The kind of life Jack understood. "Can I ask you something?" Jack said. "Go ahead." "Why did you really call Curtis last night? The jet was fixed. Your meeting was saved. You could have just moved on with your life and forgotten about the mechanic with the duct tape toolbox. But you didn't. You called Curtis and asked about me. Why?" Sophia ran her finger along the rim of her coffee mug. "Because you scared me." "I scared you?" "Not physically. You scared me because you showed me something I didn't want to see. You stood in my hangar, surrounded by people who bow to me, people who tell me what I want to hear, people who would never dream of turning down my money. And you tore up my check. You looked me in the eye and told me that some things aren't for sale. And I realized, standing there with those pieces of paper on the floor, that I couldn't remember the last time I believed that was true." Jack leaned forward. "It is true. I know that now. That's why I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Hoboken, drinking bad coffee, instead of being in my office. Because the man who reminded me of that truth is someone I want in my life. Professionally, at least." "This coffee isn't that bad." "It's terrible, Jack." He laughed. It caught him off guard. A real laugh, deep and warm, the kind he usually saved for Maya's jokes. And Sophia smiled. Not the controlled, corporate smile she wore in boardrooms and press conferences. A real smile, brief and bright, like sunlight through a crack in a wall. "I'll give you my answer by Friday," Jack said. "Friday works." They stood. Sophia extended her hand. Jack shook it. Her grip was firm, but her hand was trembling slightly. He noticed, but didn't mention it. "Thank you for hearing me out," she said. "Thank you for the apology. I know that wasn't easy." "It wasn't. Good things usually aren't." Jack walked out of the coffee shop, climbed into his Civic, and sat for a moment before starting the engine. $350,000 a year. Stock options. A team of his own. The numbers were so far from his reality that they felt fictional, like someone had handed him a winning lottery ticket and he wasn't sure it was real. But it wasn't the money that stayed with him as he drove to Maya's school. It was the trembling in Sophia's hand, the relief in her eyes when he accepted her apology, the way she'd ordered oat milk and then changed to black coffee, like she was trying to strip away the layers of who she'd become to find something simpler underneath. She was broken. Jack could feel it the same way he felt a cracked housing or a fractured pin. Not with his eyes, but with something deeper. Sophia Hartwell had everything the world said a person should want, and she was running on fumes. The engine was still turning, but barely, and nobody around her could see it, because they were all too busy being afraid of her to look closely enough. Jack pulled up to Maya's school at 3:15. She was sitting on the front steps with her backpack, reading a book.
When she saw the Civic, she closed the book, jumped up, and jogged to the car. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, baby girl. 94 on the history test?" 94. She buckled her seatbelt. "Mrs. Patterson said it was the highest grade in the class." "That's because you studied." "That's because you made me study. I wanted to watch TV." "And now you've got the highest grade in the class." "You're welcome." Maya laughed and punched his arm lightly. Then she looked at him. Really looked at him, the way only a daughter can look at her father and see everything he's trying to hide. "You're different today," she said.
Different how? I don't know. You look like you're thinking hard about something. What happened at the airport last night? You never told me. Jack drove for a block before answering. "I fixed a jet." "A jet? Like a private jet?" "A Gulfstream G700. "Dad, that's like a $90 million plane." "How do you know that?" "YouTube. So what happened?" Jack told her. Not everything. He left out the part about the check and the kneeling demand. But he told her about the jet, the engineers, the pin, the fix. And he told her about the job offer. Maya was quiet for a long time. Jack glanced over. She was staring out the windshield with an expression he recognized. The same expression Denise used to wear when she was processing something important. $350,000? Maya said. That's what she said. "Dad, that's life-changing money." "I know." "So why aren't you jumping up and down?" "Because money isn't everything, Maya. Money isn't everything when you have it. When you don't have it, it's kind of a lot of things." Jack looked at his daughter, 14 years old and already cutting through the noise like a razor. "When did you get this smart?" "I've always been this smart. You just don't listen." He laughed again, twice in one day. That hadn't happened in a while. "What's stopping you?" Maya asked. "I don't know if I belong in that world." "What world?" "The corporate world. Boardrooms, executives, people in suits making decisions about things I don't understand." "Dad, you just fixed something that a bunch of people in suits couldn't fix. Maybe you don't need to understand their world. Maybe they need to understand yours." Jack didn't say anything. He just drove, letting his daughter's words settle into him the way good advice does, slowly, then all at once. That night, Jack sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pencil. He wrote 2 columns. On one side, reasons to take the job. On the other, reasons not to. The take it side filled up fast. Money, benefits, security, Maya's college fund, a chance to work on cutting-edge technology, a chance to matter on a bigger stage. The don't take it side had only 3 items. Earl, the garage, himself. He stared at those 3 words for a long time. Earl, his loyal customers, the retired bus drivers and single moms, and working people who trusted him with their cars because he was honest and affordable and never turned anyone away. The garage, the only thing his father had left him besides the toolbox, a small concrete building with a hand-painted sign that read Reynolds Auto in letters that were fading but still legible. And himself, the man he'd built over 46 years, a man defined by simplicity and service and the quiet dignity of doing good work for fair pay. Could he keep being that man in Sophia Hartwell's world? He didn't know. At midnight, he called Curtis. "I can't sleep," Jack said. "Join the club. What's on your mind?" "Tell me about her. Not the Forbes version, the real version." Curtis was quiet for a moment. "You sure you want to know?" "I wouldn't ask if I wasn't sure." Sophia grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Her father worked in a coal processing plant. Her mother cleaned houses. She got a scholarship to MIT,
graduated top of her class, and started Hartwell Technologies in a garage. Not much different from yours, actually. She built that company from nothing. Literally nothing. No investors at first, no connections. Just her and a laptop and an idea about integrated sensor systems. What happened to her? Success happened to her. The kind of success that swallows people whole. She made her first billion at 38. By 40, she'd lost every friend she'd ever had. Her marriage lasted 2 years. No kids.
Her parents died within a year of each other. Her dad from black lung, her mom from a stroke 6 months later. She didn't go to either funeral. She didn't go to her own parents' funerals? She was closing a deal in Singapore, a $900 million defense contract. She told herself she'd visit the graves when she got back. That was 7 years ago. She still hasn't been. Jack closed his eyes. That's not success, Curtis. That's a prison. I know, but it's the only life she knows. And Jack, I've worked around her for 5 years. I've seen her chew people up and spit them out. I've seen her make grown men cry in conference rooms. But I've also seen her, late at night when she thinks nobody's watching, sitting alone in that jet. Just sitting there in the dark, not going anywhere. Just sitting. And I think she's the loneliest person I've ever met. Jack didn't say anything for a long time. She's not asking you to save her, Curtis said. She's asking you to help her build something. But between you and me, I think you already did something last night that none of her money could buy. What's that? You told her the truth, and she listened. Jack hung up, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. He drank it standing at the sink, looking out the window at the street. A stray cat walked along the fence line. A streetlight flickered. He picked up the legal pad. Under the "Take it" column, he added one more line. Maybe she needs someone who tells the truth. Then he crossed out the whole list, both columns, and wrote one sentence at the bottom of the page. Do the right thing. You'll know what it is when you get there. He turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. Friday was 3 days away. Friday came faster than Jack expected. He spent Thursday night at the kitchen table again, not writing this time, just sitting. The legal pad was still there, the crossed-out list, and the single sentence at the bottom staring back at him. Do the right thing. You'll know what it is when you get there. He believed that when he wrote it. Now, 12 hours from his deadline, he wasn't so sure. Maya found him there at 6 in the morning. She shuffled into the kitchen in her pajamas, saw him at the table, and stopped. Dad, did you sleep? Some. Liar. She opened the fridge and pulled out the orange juice. You're still thinking about the job. I'm still thinking about the job. Maya poured 2 glasses, set one in front of him, and sat down across the table. Can I say something? Since when do you ask permission? Since I figured out this is actually important to you, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. Jack looked at his daughter. 14 years old, eyes like her mother. Wisdom that shouldn't belong to someone who still had a stuffed elephant on her bed. Say it, he said. I think you're scared. I'm not scared. Dad, you fix jet engines. You crawl under cars in the dark. You held Mom's hand when she... Maya's voice caught. She swallowed hard. You're the bravest person I know. But this scares you because it's not about fixing something. It's about changing something. And you hate change. I don't hate change. You've had the same coffee mug for 11 years. Jack looked down at the mug in front of him. Chipped. Faded. A cartoon wrench on the side with the words, World's Best Dad. Maya had given it to him when she was 3. Denise had helped her pick it out. That's different, he said. It's not different. You keep things because they're safe. The garage is safe. The Civic is safe. Newark is safe. And I love our life, Dad. I love it. But $350,000 means I go to any college I want. It means you stop working 16-hour days.
It means we don't have to worry when the furnace breaks, or the roof leaks, or the insurance goes up. It means breathing room. And you deserve breathing room. Jack's throat tightened. When did you grow up on me? Gradually, then all at once, she grinned. I read that in a book. Hemingway. You know Hemingway? Baby girl, I'm a mechanic, not illiterate. They both laughed. And in that laughter, sitting at the kitchen table at 6 a.m, with orange juice and a chipped coffee mug between them, Jack made his decision. He called Sophia at 9 o'clock. She answered on the first ring. Jack, I'll do it. A pause. You'll take the position? I'll take the position. But I have conditions. Name them. I keep my garage. I work for you during the week, but weekends are mine. I've got customers who depend on me, and I don't abandon people. Done. I start at 8, I leave at 4. Maya gets out of school at 3:15. I need time to get her, help with homework, be a father, non-negotiable. Done. And I want it in writing that I answer to you, not to a department head, not to a VP, not to someone who's going to look at my resume and decide I'm not qualified. If I'm doing this, I report directly to you. You're the one who hired me. You're the one who evaluates me. Sophia was quiet for a moment. That's unusual, Jack. I have 1,200 employees. I can't have everyone reporting directly to me. I'm not everyone. You said so yourself. You said I fill a gap nobody else can fill. If that's true, then treat me like it. Another pause. Jack could hear her thinking, recalculating, running the equation in her head. Done, she said. You report to me, directly. Is there anything else? Yeah, one more thing. What? I'm bringing my own toolbox. Sophia laughed. It was the first time Jack had heard her really laugh. Not a polite chuckle, not a controlled response, but an actual laugh that sounded like it surprised her as much as it surprised him. Duct tape and all? She said. Duct tape and all. Then welcome to Hartwell Technologies, Jack. I'll have the paperwork sent over today. I'll read every word of it. I'd expect nothing less. He hung up and sat in his garage for a while, looking at the tools on the pegboard, the oil stains on the concrete floor, the faded sign above the bay door. Reynolds Auto. His father's name. His name. 30 years of honest work lived in these walls. I'm not leaving, he said to the empty garage. I'm just expanding. The first Monday came like a freight train. Jack dropped Maya at school at 7:45, drove to Hartwell Technologies' main facility in Jersey City, and parked his Civic in the executive lot. The security guard at the gate looked at the car, looked at the badge Jack had been issued, looked at the car again, and waved him through with an expression that suggested he was considering calling someone to verify. Jack walked into the building carrying his toolbox. The lobby was glass and steel, high ceilings, people moving fast with laptops and coffee cups, and the kind of purposeful energy that comes from working at a company where the stock price matters more than sleep. A woman at the front desk smiled at him. "Can I help you?" "Jack Reynolds. I'm starting today. Aviation Division." She typed something into her computer. "Oh, Mr. Reynolds, yes. You're expected on the 14th floor. Ms. Hartwell's assistant will meet you at the elevator." "Thank you." He rode the elevator alone. When the doors opened on 14, a young man in a slim-fit suit was waiting for him. He extended his hand. "Mr. Reynolds? I'm Ethan. Ms. Hartwell's executive assistant.
Welcome to Hartwell Technologies. Thanks, Ethan. Call me Jack. Of course, I'll show you to your office. I have an office? Ethan smiled like this was a normal question. Corner office. Ms. Hartwell arranged it personally. They walked through an open floor plan where dozens of engineers and analysts sat at gleaming workstations. Heads turned as Jack passed. He could feel the eyes on him, on his work boots, his toolbox, his calloused hands. The whispers started before he was 10 feet into the room. Is that the new hire? That's the guy Sophia brought in. What's with the toolbox? Jack kept walking. He'd been the only black kid in his vocational school. He'd been the only enlisted mechanic who could outperform the officers on technical evaluations. He'd been underestimated his entire life. This was nothing new. Ethan opened the door at the end of the hall. The office was large, too large for Jack's comfort, with a window overlooking the Hudson River and Manhattan beyond it. A mahogany desk, a leather chair, a computer setup that probably cost more than his Civic. If you need anything at all, Ethan began. I need a workbench, Jack said. A workbench? A steel workbench, 6 feet long, and a pegboard for tools. And better lighting. I can't work under these. He looked up at the recessed ceiling lights. I need direct task lighting, adjustable arm lamps, at least 2. Ethan blinked. I'll make that happen. Today, if possible. I can't do my job at a mahogany desk. Today. Got it. Ethan left. Jack set his toolbox on the desk, opened it, and looked at the tools inside. His father's tools. Some of them were 40 years old. Each one polished, sharpened, cared for like a family heirloom. Because that's exactly what they were. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Welcome to the team. Conference room 14B at 10 o'clock. You're meeting your division. Try not to scare them. Jack typed back. No promises. At 10 o'clock, he walked into conference room 14B. Around the table sat 8 people, 6 men and 2 women, all in business casual, all with laptops open, all looking at him with expressions that ranged from curious to skeptical to outright hostile. At the head of the table, Sophia stood. She was back in her element now. Power suit, straight posture, controlled expression. But when she looked at Jack, something shifted. Just briefly. A flicker of something that looked like hope. Everyone, she said, this is Jack Reynolds. He's heading up our new Diagnostic and Quality Assurance Division for Hartwell Aviation. Jack comes to us from a background in naval aviation mechanics and 30 years of independent technical work. He answers directly to me. A man near the end of the table, late 40s, silver hair, expensive watch, leaned back in his chair. Sophia, with all due respect, can we talk about qualifications? This is a senior leadership position in a division that's going to interface with the FAA, with military contractors, with Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney. I pulled Mr. Reynolds' file this morning. He doesn't have a college degree. The room went cold. Jack felt every eye shift to him. And you are? Jack asked. Victor Hale, Chief Technology Officer. Nice to meet you, Victor. You're right. I don't have a college degree. I have 30 years of keeping machines alive with my hands. I've rebuilt engines that your textbooks would call unsalvageable. I diagnosed a total avionics failure on a G700 in 40 minutes that your Rolls-Royce partners couldn't crack in 3 days. You want to talk about qualifications? My qualifications are in my toolbox and in my hands. What are yours in? Victor's face reddened. I have a PhD in aerospace engineering from Stanford. Good for you. Can you feel a microfracture in a contact pin with your thumb? Silence. I didn't think so. Look, I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm not here to threaten anyone's position or tell anyone they're doing their job wrong.
I'm here because there's a gap between what computers can see and what human beings can feel. I fill that gap. If you can work with that, we'll get along fine. If you can't, that's your problem, not mine." Sophia watched this exchange without intervening. She let Jack fight his own battle. And she noticed something she hadn't expected. The two women at the table were leaning forward, not back. They were engaged, interested. One of them, a young engineer named Rachel Park, was nodding almost imperceptibly. "Any other questions?" Jack said. Nobody spoke. "Good. Then let me tell you what I need. I need full access to every aircraft and prototype in this division. I need to be in the room when diagnostic tests are run. I need to put my hands on every engine, every harness, every connector before it goes into production. And I need one thing that's not in any manual or any protocol." "What's that?" Rachel asked. "I need you to trust me. Not today. Trust is earned. But I need you to give me a chance to earn it." Rachel nodded. "Fair enough." Victor said nothing. He closed his laptop with a deliberate click and folded his arms. The meeting ended. People filed out. Victor was the last to leave, and as he passed Jack at the door, he stopped. "This isn't a garage in Newark, Reynolds. The stakes here are measured in billions, not brake pads." "The stakes in my garage are measured in people's lives, Victor. Every car I fix carries a family. Every brake pad I replace keeps someone's kids safe on the highway. Don't talk to me about stakes." Victor's jaw tightened. He left without another word. Jack stood alone in the conference room. He exhaled slowly. Then Sophia stepped back in. She'd been waiting in the hallway. "You handled that well," she said. "Victor's going to be a problem." "Victor's been a problem since the day I hired him. He's brilliant, but he thinks brilliance is a substitute for character. I keep him because I need his brain. But I brought you in because I need something he doesn't have." "What's that?" "A soul." Jack looked at her. "That's a hell of a thing to say about your CTO." "It's the truth, and you told me the truth matters." "It does." "Then here's another truth, Jack. Half the people in that room are going to test you. They're going to question you, undermine you, go over your head. Victor is going to try to get you fired within 6 months. That's not a guess. That's a pattern. He's done it to 3 division heads before you. And you let him? The other 3 deserved it. They were yes men. They folded the first time Victor pushed back. I don't hire people to agree with me, Jack. I hire people to make me better. And if you can survive Victor Hale, you can survive anything in this company. I survived the Navy, a dead wife, and raising a teenage daughter alone. Victor Hale doesn't scare me. Sophia's expression softened, just for a moment. Then the wall went back up. Your workbench will be delivered by noon. The lamps, too. Is there anything else you need? Yeah. Where's the coffee around here? 3rd floor, but it's terrible. Worse than the coffee shop in Hoboken? Sophia almost smiled. Impossible. Nothing's worse than that. Then I'll manage. The first week was a war of attrition. Victor launched his campaign on Tuesday. An email to the entire aviation division, copied to 3 board members, questioning the irregular hiring process that had placed someone without formal aerospace credentials in a senior leadership role. The email was polite, professional, devastating in its implications. Jack found out about it when Rachel Park forwarded it to him with a one-word message: heads up. He read the email once, put his phone down, and went back to work. He was elbow deep in the prototype hybrid propulsion unit that Hartwell Aviation was developing, a revolutionary engine system that combined traditional jet fuel efficiency with electric propulsion. The engineering was brilliant, but something felt wrong. Not wrong in a way the computer could flag. Wrong in a way that lived in the vibration pattern, in the subtle asymmetry of the turbine rotation that Jack could feel through his fingertips. He pulled a bearing assembly and held it up to the light, turned it slowly, felt it with his thumb. "Rachel!" he called out across the lab. "Come here!" Rachel walked over, tablet in hand. "What is it?" "Feel this." He held out the bearing. She took it, turned it in her fingers. "Feels fine to me." "Rotate it counterclockwise, slowly." She did. Her eyebrows drew together. "There's a slight resistance, like a catch. That's a microscopic deformation in the inner race. Probably happened during manufacturing. Thermal stress during the forging process. It's passing every quality check because the tolerances are within spec. But under sustained load at operating temperature, that deformation is going to amplify. The bearing's going to fail, and when it does, at 30,000 feet, you're looking at a catastrophic engine seizure." Rachel stared at the bearing, then at Jack. "How did you feel that? I barely noticed it, and you told me exactly where to look." "Practice. 30 years of practice. We need to pull every bearing in the batch and test them. We need to do more than that. We need to change the forging protocol. This isn't a defect. It's a process flaw. If one bearing has it, others will too. Maybe not in this batch, maybe in the next one, or the one after that. We fix the symptom now, but if we don't fix the process, someone's going to die." Rachel typed furiously on her tablet. "I'll flag it to the manufacturing team." "Flag it to Sophia, directly. This isn't a manufacturing decision. This is a safety decision. And in my division, safety doesn't go through channels. It goes to the top." Rachel hesitated. "Victor's not going to like us going over his head. Victor's email this morning tried to get me fired. I'm not losing sleep over what Victor likes." Rachel looked at Jack for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I'll send it to Sophia now." "Thank you, Rachel." "Jack?" "Yeah?" "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. We needed someone who actually touches the work." "That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me in this building." "Give it time. The bar's pretty low around here." Jack laughed. Rachel smiled. And in that small exchange, in that tiny moment of human connection in a building full of people who were too busy or too afraid to connect, something shifted. An alliance formed. Not based on politics or power, but on respect. The kind of respect you can't buy and can't fake. Sophia received Rachel's report at 4:17 that afternoon. She read it twice. Then she pulled up the bearing specifications, the forging protocols, the quality control logs. Everything checked out on paper. Every tolerance was met. Every inspection was passed. But Jack had found a flaw that no computer, no protocol, no quality system had caught. A flaw that, left uncorrected, could have brought down an aircraft. She picked up her phone and called Jack. "Tell me about the bearing," she said. "You read Rachel's report?" "I read it. Now I want to hear it from you." Jack explained, calmly, clearly. The way he explained things to Earl and to Maya and to every customer who'd ever sat in a plastic chair outside his garage bay, in plain language, no jargon, no ego. When he finished, Sophia was quiet for a long time. "Jack, if that bearing had made it into a production engine, someone would have died, maybe a lot of someones. And none of our systems caught it. Your systems are looking at numbers. Numbers were fine. The metal wasn't. How many aircraft programs have this kind of invisible risk?" "All of them. Every single one. There's always a gap between what the data says and what the machine feels like. That's the gap I fill. That's why you hired me. I hired you because you tore up my check and told me I was wrong." "That too." Sophia exhaled. "I'm issuing a full review of the forging process, company-wide. Every bearing, every critical component. I'm putting you in charge of the review. Victor's going to do what I tell him to do.
Or Victor's going to find another company to work for. This isn't about politics, Jack. You just potentially saved lives. That's not a turf war. That's the reason this company exists. Okay. And Jack? Yeah? Thank you. 2 words. Quiet. Sincere. And Jack could tell, from the weight of them, that Sophia Hartwell didn't say those words very often. You're welcome, he said. He hung up, finished his work, cleaned his tools, and left the building at 4 o'clock sharp. He picked up Maya at school. They drove home, listening to the radio. Maya talking about a science project, and a boy named Jalen, who apparently couldn't stop looking at her in English class. He's not looking at you, Jack said. Dad, he literally turned around in his chair 3 times. Maybe he has a neck problem. You're impossible. I'm your father. Same thing. Maya rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. And Jack was smiling too, driving his rusted Civic through Newark traffic. A man who had started the week as a garage mechanic and was ending it as the person who might have prevented the worst aviation disaster nobody ever heard about. That night, after Maya went to bed, Jack sat on the porch steps and called Curtis. "How's the new job?" Curtis asked. "I found a bearing defect that could have killed people." "On your first week?" "Day 3. Curtis whistled low. "What did Sophia say?" "She said thank you, and she meant it. That's more than most people get from her. She once fired a VP, and the only thing she said was, 'Clean out your desk by noon.' No thank you, no goodbye." "She's not what I expected, Curtis." "What do you mean?" Jack leaned back on the steps and looked up at the sky. No stars visible, too much light pollution. But he looked anyway, the way his father used to, searching for something above the noise. "I mean, she's not the villain. She's not the cold-blooded billionaire that people think she is. She's someone who built walls so high she can't see over them anymore, and she knows it. That's the part that gets me. She knows she's trapped, and she doesn't know how to get out." "And you think you can help her?" "I think I already am. Not by fixing her jet or finding her bearing defects. Just by being honest. She's surrounded by people who lie to her all day long. They tell her what she wants to hear. They protect their jobs. They play the game. I don't play games. And I think that's the thing she's been starving for." "Be careful, Jack." "Careful of what?" "Of caring too much. Sophia Hartwell is not a broken engine you can fix with your hands. She's a human being with 30 years of armor. You start trying to peel that armor off, you might not like what's underneath. And she might not let you." "I hear you." "Do you?" "I said I hear you, Curtis." "All right. Just watch your back with Victor. He's not done." "I know he's not. Good night, Jack." "Good night." Jack sat on those steps for another hour, listening to the sounds of Newark at night. A siren in the distance, a dog barking, the bass line of someone's music 2 blocks over. His city, his neighborhood, his life. $350,000 a year, a corner office, a company-wide safety review with his name on it, and a woman who said thank you like it was a foreign language she was just remembering how to speak. He went inside, checked on Maya, and sat on the edge of his bed. On the nightstand, next to his phone and his alarm clock, was a framed photo of Denise, taken the year before she got sick. She was laughing at something, her head thrown back, her hand on her chest. Jack couldn't remember what she'd been laughing at. That bothered him sometimes, that the details were fading, even though the love wasn't. "I think I'm doing okay, Dee," he whispered. "I think maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. I just wish you were here to tell me I'm not crazy." He turned off the light.
In her penthouse on the Upper East Side, 43 floors above the city, Sophia Hartwell sat at her kitchen counter with Jack's bearing report open on her laptop. She'd read it 4 times. Not because she didn't understand it. She understood it perfectly. She read it 4 times because of the last line. Jack had written, "The cost of replacing these bearings now is approximately $340,000. The cost of not replacing them is immeasurable. Some things don't fit on a balance sheet." Sophia closed the laptop. She poured herself a glass of wine. She drank it standing at the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The same skyline she'd conquered and claimed and turned into her empire. Some things don't fit on a balance sheet. She thought about her father's hands, rough, cracked, permanently black under the nails from the coal plant. She thought about her mother's hands, red and raw from cleaning other people's houses. She thought about Jack's hands, stained with oil, holding a tiny bearing up to the light, like it was the most important thing in the world. Because it was. She set down the wine glass and did something she hadn't done in 7 years. She opened her phone, searched for flights to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and booked one for Saturday morning. It was time to visit her parents' graves. Sophia didn't tell anyone she was going. She woke up Saturday at 5 in the morning, dressed in clothes she hadn't worn in years, a simple sweater, old jeans, flat shoes, and drove herself to the airport. Not Teterboro, not the G700. She booked a commercial flight out of Newark Liberty, economy class, middle seat. She didn't know why she chose economy. Maybe she wanted to feel small. Maybe she needed to remember what it was like to be a person instead of a brand. The flight to Scranton was 45 minutes. She rented a car at the airport, a basic sedan, nothing special, and drove through streets she hadn't seen since she was 22 years old. The town had changed and hadn't changed, the way hometowns do. New storefronts in old buildings, different names on the same churches. The bones of the place were exactly as she remembered, but the skin had shifted. She found the cemetery without GPS. Her hands remembered the turns, even though her mind had tried to forget them. She parked, got out, and stood at the gate for a long time before walking in. Her parents were buried side by side, Frank and Maria Hartwell. The headstones were modest, gray granite, simple lettering. Someone had been maintaining the plots. The grass was trimmed. There were fresh flowers in a small vase between the stones. Sophia didn't know who was leaving them. A neighbor, maybe. A friend from her mother's church. Someone who remembered them when their own daughter hadn't bothered to show up. She knelt between the graves. The ground was cold and damp through her jeans. She put one hand on each headstone, and the granite was so cold it burned. "I'm sorry," she said. That was all. 2 words. The same 2 words Jack Reynolds had pulled out of her in a Hoboken coffee shop. The same 2 words she'd spent 7 years avoiding, because saying them meant admitting what she'd done, what she'd chosen. And Sophia Hartwell did not admit weakness. Not to her board, not to her competitors, not to herself. But kneeling there, between the 2 people who had given her everything and asked for nothing, she couldn't hold it anymore. "I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry I chose a contract over your funeral, Dad. I'm sorry I told myself I'd come back and then didn't. I'm sorry I turned into someone you wouldn't recognize. Mom, you used to say that money changes people, and I told you it wouldn't change me. And you were right. You were right about everything." She stayed for an hour. She didn't cry. Sophia Hartwell hadn't cried since she was 26 years old, the night her first investor told her
that a woman couldn't run a tech company, and she should go back to Pennsylvania where she belonged. She'd cried that night, alone, in a studio apartment in Brooklyn, eating cold soup from a can, and then she'd made a promise to herself that she would never cry again. Crying was surrender. Crying was weakness. Crying was her mother on the kitchen floor after her father's diagnosis, and Sophia had sworn she would never be that vulnerable. But kneeling between those graves, she came close, closer than she had in 20 years. She drove back to the airport, flew home, and was in her penthouse by 2 in the afternoon. She sat at the kitchen counter and picked up her phone. She scrolled to Jack's number and stared at it. She didn't call. She didn't know what she would say. I went to Scranton because of you. I knelt on wet grass and talked to headstones because a mechanic from Newark told me some things aren't for sale, and it cracked something open inside me that I've been trying to keep shut for 3 decades. Instead, she texted, "The bearing review is scheduled for Monday. I'd like you there at 8. Professional, safe, controlled. Jack replied, "I'll be there at 7:30. Of course he would. Jack Reynolds was always early. Jack Reynolds was always ready. Jack Reynolds was the kind of man who showed up before you asked and stayed after you needed him to. Sophia set the phone down and poured herself a glass of water. No wine tonight. She didn't know why. She just didn't want it. Monday morning, Jack walked into the Hartwell Technologies conference room at 7:28, carrying a cardboard box. Rachel was already there, laptop open, coffee in hand. She looked at the box. "What's in there?" "Evidence." Jack set the box on the table and pulled out a bearing, the original defective one he'd found. Next to it, he placed 6 more. "I pulled these from the remaining stock over the weekend. 3 of them have the same micro-deformation. 3 are clean. That's a 50% failure rate in the critical component of a propulsion system that's designed to carry human beings." Rachel's face went pale. 50%? 50%, and every single one of them passed quality control. "Jack, if this got out, if the FAA found out we had a 50% defect rate in a primary bearing assembly, they'd shut us down, ground the program, potentially pull Hartwell's aviation certification entirely." "Does Sophia know?" "She will in 30 minutes. People filed in. Engineers, quality managers, 2 representatives from the bearing manufacturer, and Victor Hale, who walked in last, sat at the far end of the table and opened his laptop without looking at Jack. Sophia arrived at exactly 8. She closed the door behind her and remained standing. "Jack, the floor is yours." Jack stood. He didn't use slides. He didn't use a presentation. He placed the 7 bearings on the table in a row and told the story the way he told every story, plainly, directly, without decoration. He explained the deformation. He explained how it evaded digital detection. He explained what would happen at altitude, under load, at operating temperature. He explained that 3 out of 7 components in their current stock would fail catastrophically in flight. The room was silent. The bearing manufacturer's representatives exchanged glances that carried the weight of careers ending. Then Victor spoke. "This is one man's opinion based on a tactile assessment. We have digital quality systems that are ISO certified, FAA compliant, and have been validated across dozens of programs. I'm not prepared to halt a multi-billion-dollar aviation initiative because someone felt something with their thumb." Jack looked at Victor, not with anger, not with contempt, with patience. The kind of patience a man develops over 30 years of being doubted. "You're right, Victor. It is based on feel. So let's take feel out of it. Rachel, pull up the electron microscopy results." Rachel connected her laptop to the projector.
High-resolution images filled the screen, magnified cross-sections of the Bering inner race. And there it was, visible at 400 times magnification. A crystalline deformation pattern in the metal structure. Tiny, subtle, invisible to standard inspection, but unmistakable under the right lens. I asked Rachel to run electron microscopy on all 7 bearings Friday afternoon, Jack said. The 3 I flagged by touch all show this deformation. The 3 I cleared are clean. My thumb isn't an opinion, Victor. It's a diagnostic tool.
The microscopy just confirmed what my hands already knew.
Victor stared at the screen. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. The forging process uses a cooling rate that's within spec, but at the upper boundary of the acceptable range, Jack continued. At that rate, certain alloy compositions develop internal stress patterns that don't show up in standard hardness or dimensional testing. The fix is simple. Slow the cooling rate by 12%. The cost is minimal. The alternative is an engine failure at 35,000 feet. Sophia stepped forward. How long to implement the fix? 2 weeks for the process change, another week to produce and test new stock. We pull every existing bearing from inventory and destroy them. Do it, Sophia said. Effective immediately. Full production halt on the propulsion program until the new bearings are validated. Sophia, Victor said, leaning forward, a production halt costs us $8 million a week.
We're looking at $24 million minimum. And a crash costs us everything, Victor. Every life on that aircraft, every future contract, every shred of credibility this company has. I will not put a flawed component into a machine that carries human beings. This is not a discussion.
Victor closed his laptop. I'd like my objection noted for the record.
Noted, Sophia said, and overruled.
The meeting ended.
People filed out quickly, the way they do when they've just witnessed something seismic and need time to process it.
The bearing manufacturer's reps left without making eye contact with anyone. Jack was packing up his box when Victor stopped at the door. You think you've won something, Reynolds? This isn't about winning. Everything is about winning. You just don't know it yet. Victor left. Jack looked at Sophia. She was standing at the window, arms crossed, staring at nothing. He's going to come after you for this, Jack said. The production halt.
The cost. He's going to frame it as your mistake.
Let him.
I'm serious, Sophia. I've known men like Victor my whole life. They don't lose gracefully. They burn things down on the way out. Sophia turned to face him. I've been fighting men like Victor since I was 23 years old. I built this company while people like him told me I couldn't. I'm not afraid of him.
I know you're not. I'm just saying. Watch your back.
Is that concern I'm hearing, Jack Reynolds?
It's common sense. She almost smiled.
Thank you. For the bearings. For the review. For being right.
I was just doing my job.
You were doing more than that, and we both know it.
Jack picked up his box. I need to get down to the lab. The new cooling protocol isn't going to right itself.
Jack,
he stopped at the door.
I went to Scranton this weekend.
He turned. Her voice had changed. The command stripped out of it. The armor pulled aside for just a moment. Scranton, he said.
I visited my parents' graves. First time in 7 years.
Jack set the box down. He didn't say anything. He just waited, the way he always did, giving people the space to say what they needed to say without rushing them. I knelt in the wet grass and I apologized to 2 headstones, she said. And I don't know if they heard me. I don't know if it matters. But I went. Because you said some things aren't for sale. And I realized that one of the things I sold was my connection to them. I traded my parents' funerals for a contract. I traded their memory for a quarterly earnings report. And I've been carrying that for 7 years, pretending it didn't weigh anything. It weighs everything, Jack said quietly. It weighs everything, she repeated. How did you know? Because I carry weight too. Different weight, but it's still heavy. My wife's been gone 6 years, and I still talk to her picture at night. I still reach for her side of the bed some mornings before I remember.
Grief doesn't get lighter, Sophia. You just get stronger. But you have to let yourself feel it first. And you haven't. Not for 7 years. Sophia uncrossed her arms. For a moment, she looked like someone Jack had never seen before. Not the billionaire CEO, not the woman who commanded rooms and crushed competitors, but the girl from Scranton, whose father worked in a coal plant and whose mother cleaned houses. A girl who had been so determined to escape that life that she'd left everything behind, including the parts of herself that mattered most. I didn't cry, she said. I wanted to. I knelt there for an hour and I wanted to cry, and I couldn't. I've forgotten how. You haven't forgotten. You're just scared of what happens if you start. What happens? You find out you're human. And that's terrifying for someone who spent 20 years pretending they're not. Sophia looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded, once, and the wall went back up. Brick by brick, fast and practiced, the CEO returned. The posture straightened. The voice leveled out. I'll let you get to the lab, she said. Sophia, yes? Going to Scranton took guts. Your parents would be proud of you for that. Her lip trembled, just barely, a hairline crack in the concrete. You think so? I know so, because my daughter makes me proud every day. And it's not because of her test scores or her grades. It's because she tries. She shows up and she tries. And you showed up this weekend. That counts. Sophia nodded again, faster this time, like she needed to stop the conversation before it went somewhere she wasn't ready to go. Thank you, Jack. Anytime. He left. Sophia stood alone in the conference room, both hands flat on the table, breathing slowly. In 20 years of running Hartwell Technologies, she had fired hundreds of people, closed billions in deals, testified before Congress, and stared down hostile takeover attempts without flinching. None of it, not one single moment, had required as much courage as standing in a conference room and telling a mechanic from Newark that she'd visited her parents' graves and couldn't cry. She straightened up, smoothed her jacket, and walked to her office. There was work to do. There was always work to do. But something was different now, and she could feel it the way Jack felt a fracture in a bearing, not with her eyes, not with data, but with something deeper, something instinctive. The architecture of her life was shifting, slowly. The foundations were the same, but the walls were moving, and light was getting into rooms that had been dark for a very long time. 2 floors below, Jack was in the lab with Rachel, sketching out the new cooling protocol on a whiteboard. Rachel watched him draw, his hand moving with the same steady confidence she'd seen when he diagnosed the bearing. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Depends on how personal." "How do you stay so calm? Victor attacks you in front of the whole company. Sophia puts you in charge of a review that could sink $1 billion program. You find a defect that could kill people, and you just keep going, like none of it touches you." Jack set the marker down. "It all touches me, Rachel. Every bit of it. I just don't let it drive. My father used to say, the hand that holds the wrench has to be steady, no matter what the rest of you is feeling. You can be scared, you can be angry, you can be heartbroken, but the hand stays steady, because the work depends on it, and people depend on the work." That's a good philosophy. It's not a philosophy. It's survival. When my wife died,
I had an 8-year-old who needed me to make breakfast and get her to school and check her homework and pretend I wasn't falling apart. So my hand stayed steady. When the bills piled up and I was 3 months behind on the mortgage and I couldn't afford to fix the furnace in January, my hand stayed steady. It's not calm, Rachel. It's discipline. And it costs more than people think. Rachel was quiet. I'm sorry about your wife. Thank you. She was the best person I ever knew. And she would have loved this. Me, in a corner office with a view of Manhattan, arguing with a Stanford PhD about bearing metallurgy. She would have laughed until she couldn't breathe. She sounds wonderful. She was. And she's the reason I'm here. Not Sophia's money, not the job title. Denise always said I was meant for more than a garage in Newark. I didn't believe her then. I'm starting to believe her now. They worked until 3:30. Jack cleaned his tools, locked up the lab, and drove to Maya's school. She was waiting on the steps, as always, book in hand. How was the big meeting? She asked, climbing into the Civic. I saved the program. Again? Again. Dad, you've been there 2 weeks and you've already saved it twice. At this rate, they're going to name the building after you. I'd settle for a parking spot closer to the door. I'm tired of walking past the Teslas. Maya laughed. Then her face got serious. Dad, can I ask you something? Shoot. This woman, Sophia, the one who runs the company, what's she like? Jack thought about it. He thought about Sophia at the coffee shop, trembling hands around a coffee mug. He thought about Sophia in the conference room, telling him about Scranton with a crack in her voice. He thought about Sophia overruling Victor without hesitation to protect lives she would never meet. She's complicated, he said. Good complicated or bad complicated? Both. She's made mistakes, big ones, but she's trying to fix them. And she's got more guts than most people I've ever met. Do you like her? Maya. What? It's a legitimate question. She's my boss. That's not what I asked. I respect her. I think she's brilliant. I think she's lonely. And I think she's one of the most frustrating human beings I've ever encountered. Dad, you just described exactly what Mom used to say about you. Jack opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's not the same thing. Sure, Dad. It's not. Whatever you say. They drove in silence for a block. Then Jack said, Your mother really said that about me? All the time. She'd tell Aunt Carol on the phone, That man is brilliant and lonely and the most frustrating human being alive, and I love him so much it makes me crazy. I was 8. I remember everything. Jack gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. His eyes stung. You never told me that. You never needed to hear it before. They pulled into the driveway. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt, but didn't get out. She looked at her father with those eyes, Denise's eyes, and put her hand on his arm. Dad, Mom's been gone 6 years, and you've been amazing. You've been everything to me. But you're allowed to be something to someone else, too. You know that, right? Maya, it's not like that with Sophia. I didn't say it was. I said you're allowed. Whenever. With whoever. You don't need my permission, but you have it anyway. She kissed his cheek, grabbed her backpack, and went inside. Jack sat in the car for a long time. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. The board approved the production halt. Full support. Victor abstained from the vote. I thought you should know. Jack typed back. That's good news. You did the right thing. Sophia replied, I had help. 3 dots appeared. She was typing something else. The dots disappeared. Appeared again. Disappeared. Then, Jack, There's something I need to tell you. It's about Victor. He's been meeting with board members privately. I don't have details yet, but something's happening. Be careful. Jack stared at the message.
Curtis's warning echoed in his mind. He's not done. And Sophia's own words from that first Monday. Victor's going to try to get you fired within 6 months. It hadn't been 6 months. It had been 2 weeks, and Victor was already moving. Jack put the phone in his pocket, went inside, and helped Maya with her homework. They made dinner together, spaghetti with sauce from a jar because neither of them felt like cooking from scratch. They ate at the kitchen table and talked about school and Jalen's apparent neck problem and whether Maya should try out for the track team in spring. Normal life. Simple life. The life Jack had built from the wreckage of losing Denise, brick by brick, day by day, holding it together with the same steady hands that held his wrenches. But underneath the normalcy, something was rumbling. Victor Hale was making moves in the dark, and Jack could feel it. The same way he'd felt the bearing defect. The same way he'd felt the fractured pin in the G700. Something was wrong. Something was coming. And it was going to test everything Jack had built at Hartwell Technologies. After Maya went to bed, Jack called Curtis. "Victor's making moves," Jack said. "What kind of moves?" "Private meetings with board members. Sophia gave me a heads up, but she doesn't have details." Curtis was quiet for a moment. "Jack, Victor Hale has been at Hartwell for 9 years. He's got relationships on that board that go back decades. Some of those board members were his professors at Stanford. He's connected in ways Sophia can't always see." "What are you telling me?" "I'm telling you that Victor doesn't just want you gone. He wants Sophia weakened. You're the excuse, but you're not the target. You're the wedge. If he can prove that Sophia made a bad hire, an unqualified hire, a hire based on emotion instead of credentials, he can use that to undermine her authority. And if he can undermine her authority, he can make a play for the CEO position. A coup. A corporate coup. Quiet, legal, devastating. And I'm the ammunition. You're the ammunition." Jack sat in the dark living room, phone pressed to his ear, listening to the furnace rattle in the basement. The same furnace he couldn't afford to replace. The same house. The same life. But the ground beneath it was shifting, and he was standing on a fault line he hadn't seen coming. "What do I do?" Jack asked. "What you always do, brother. You show up. You do the work. You let your hands speak louder than his mouth. And you trust that the truth has a weight that lies can't match." "That sounds like something my father would have said." "Your father was a wise man." "Yeah, he was." Jack hung up, turned off the lights, and went to bed. He didn't sleep well. He dreamed about bearings in boardrooms and a woman kneeling between 2 headstones in Scranton, trying to cry and finding that she'd forgotten how. At 3 in the morning, his phone lit up on the nightstand. A text from Sophia, sent at 2:47 a.m. "I can't sleep. I keep thinking about what you said. That grief doesn't get lighter. You just get stronger. I've been getting stronger for 20 years, Jack. I'm tired of being strong." Jack read it twice. He picked up the phone and typed slowly, carefully, the way he did everything. "Then stop. Just for tonight. You don't have to be strong at 3 a.m. Nobody's watching. Nobody's keeping score. Just be tired. That's allowed too." She didn't reply for a long time. Then, at 3:22, "Good night, Jack." "Good night, Sophia." He set the phone down and closed his eyes. Sleep came slowly, but it came. And somewhere across the river, in a penthouse 43 floors above Manhattan, Sophia Hartwell set her phone on the nightstand, pulled the covers up to her chin,
and felt something warm and unfamiliar spread through her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was peace. Small, fragile, temporary, probably, but real.
She hadn't felt it in 20 years. Victor made his move on a Tuesday. Jack was in the lab at 7:15, running vibration tests on the first batch of newly forged bearings, when Rachel burst through the door with her phone in her hand and panic in her eyes. "Jack, you need to see this." She held up the phone. An email, sent at 6:43 that morning, from Victor Hale to the entire Hartwell Technologies Board of Directors, CC'd to legal, CC'd to the head of human resources, CC'd to 3 external shareholders. The subject line read, "Formal complaint regarding unauthorized hiring practices and misuse of executive authority." Jack took the phone and read. The email was surgical. Victor laid out a case that Sophia Hartwell had bypassed standard hiring protocols, ignored credential requirements, and installed an unqualified individual in a senior leadership role based on a single anecdotal interaction. He cited company policy. He cited FAA regulatory standards for personnel and aviation oversight positions. He cited the $24 million production halt as evidence of reckless decision-making driven by personal bias rather than sound engineering judgment. And he concluded with a recommendation that the board convene an emergency session to review Sophia's leadership decisions and consider a vote of no confidence. Jack handed the phone back to Rachel. "He's going for her throat," Rachel said. "He's going for both our throats, but she's the one he really wants." "What are you going to do?" Jack pulled on his work gloves. "Right now, I'm going to finish testing these bearings. Because if Victor's case depends on proving I'm unqualified, then the best defense I have is the work. The work doesn't lie." "Jack, this isn't about bearings anymore. This is corporate warfare." "It's always about bearings, Rachel. It's always about the work. Victor wants to make this political. I won't let him. The minute I stop doing my job to fight his game, he wins." Rachel stared at him. "You're the calmest person I've ever met." "I'm not calm. I'm focused. There's a difference." He went back to work. His hands were steady. His mind was not. But the hands stayed steady because the work depended on it, and people depended on the work. His father's rule. The only rule that ever mattered. Sophia called at 8:12. Jack picked up on the first ring. "You saw it," she said. "I saw it. I'm handling it." "How?" "I called an emergency board meeting for this afternoon, 3 o'clock. If Victor wants a fight, he'll get one." "Sophia, his case isn't weak. I don't have a degree. You did bypass the normal hiring process. The production halt did cost $24 million. On paper, he's got ammunition. And off paper, you found a defect that could have killed every person who ever boarded one of our aircraft. That's not on paper, Jack. That's in the metal. That's in the bearings sitting in your lab right now. That's the kind of evidence that doesn't fit in Victor's email." "What do you need from me?" "I need you at that meeting, 3 o'clock, conference room 2, executive floor. Bring the bearings, bring the microscopy, bring everything." "I'll be there." "And Jack, wear whatever you want. Don't change for them. Don't change for anyone." She hung up. Jack looked down at himself. Work boots, jeans, a gray Henley with a small oil stain near the collar. The same clothes he wore every day. The same clothes he'd been wearing the night he walked into that hangar at Teterboro and changed everything. He called Maya's school and left a message that she should take the bus home today. Then he called Curtis. "It's happening," Jack said. "I heard. Victor sent that email to half the industry. It's not just internal anymore.
He leaked it to a tech journalist at Bloomberg. There's going to be a story.
A story about what? A mechanic who found a life-threatening defect? A story about a billionaire CEO who hired her jet mechanic off the street and put him in charge of a billion-dollar aviation program. That's how Victor's spinning it. He's making it sound personal, emotional, like Sophia lost her judgment. That's a lie. It doesn't matter if it's a lie, Jack. It matters if it sells. And in the corporate world, that story sells. Jack gripped the phone. I won't let him use me to destroy her. Then fight. Not his way, your way. You know how to do this, Jack. You've been proving people wrong your entire life. This is just a bigger room. Yeah, a lot bigger. You've got this, brother. Thanks, Curtis. Jack spent the next 5 hours preparing. He ran every test. He documented every result. He built a case not with corporate language or boardroom slides, but with facts. Measurable, tangible, undeniable facts. The bearing deformation, the microscopy images, the forging analysis, the corrected cooling protocol, and the test results from the new batch, which showed 0 defects across every single unit. Rachel helped him organize everything into a binder. Physical copies, printed photographs, data sheets. Old school. The kind of evidence you could hold in your hands and feel. At 2:30, Jack washed his hands in the lab sink, dried them, and picked up the binder and the box of bearings. Rachel walked him to the elevator. "Good luck up there," she said. "Luck's got nothing to do with it." "I know, but still." He rode the elevator to the executive floor. The doors opened onto a hallway he'd never been to before. Thick carpet, wood paneling. The kind of quiet that only exists where power lives. A woman at a desk directed him to conference room 2. He walked in. The room was already full. 12 board members sat around a long, oval table. Victor was at one end, impeccable in a charcoal suit, a stack of documents in front of him, looking like a man who had already won. At the other end sat Sophia, straight-backed, composed, her expression giving away nothing. Jack set his box on the floor and took the empty chair next to Sophia. Every head in the room turned toward him. He felt the assessment, the calculation, the measurement, the same look Sophia had given him in the hangar that first night. They were all doing it, evaluating him by what they could see. The board chairman, a silver-haired man named Robert Ames, called the meeting to order. "We're here at the request of our CTO, Dr. Victor Hale, to discuss concerns regarding recent hiring decisions and their impact on the Hartwell Aviation Division. Victor, you have the floor." Victor stood. He was smooth, rehearsed, every word placed with precision. "Thank you, Robert. I want to be clear. This isn't personal. This is about standards." Hartwell Technologies has built its reputation on excellence, on rigor, on hiring the best minds in the world. Our aviation division is poised to revolutionize the industry with hybrid propulsion technology. The stakes are measured in billions of dollars and, more importantly, in human lives. In that context, I have serious concerns about the appointment of Mr. Jack Reynolds to a senior leadership position. He clicked through a presentation. Jack's lack of formal education, his background as an independent mechanic, the unconventional hiring process, the production halt and its cost. He presented it all with the cool detachment of a prosecutor building a case. "I'm not questioning Mr. Reynolds' character," Victor said. "I'm questioning whether this company can afford to place someone without formal aerospace credentials in a position that interfaces directly with the FAA, with military contractors, and with the safety of every future passenger on a Hartwell aircraft." He sat down. The room was quiet. Several board members were nodding. Robert Ames turned to Sophia. Sophia, your response? Sophia stood. Before I respond, I'd like Mr. Reynolds to address the board directly. He's the person in question. He deserves to speak for himself. Robert Ames looked at Jack. Mr. Reynolds? Jack stood. He didn't have a presentation. He didn't have slides. He had a box of bearings and a binder full of truth. I'm not going to stand here and defend my resume, Jack said. You've all seen it. It's thin. I know that. I don't have a PhD. I didn't go to Stanford. I went to vocational school in Newark, and then I went to the United States Navy, where I spent 6 years keeping F/A-18 engine systems operational on an aircraft carrier. After that, I opened a garage. I've been fixing things with my hands for 30 years. He opened the box and placed the defective bearing on the table, then the clean one next to it. This is why I'm here. The bearing on the left passed every quality control test in Hartwell's system, every digital inspection, every tolerance check. It's within spec on paper. It's perfect on screen. And it would have failed catastrophically in flight, killing everyone on board. He opened the binder and slid the microscopy images to the center of the table. Board members leaned in. I found this defect with my hands, not with software, not with a diagnostic system, with 30 years of experience feeling metal and knowing when something's wrong. Dr. Hale is right. I don't have formal credentials, but my hands caught something that his entire digital quality system missed. And if I hadn't been here, if Sophia hadn't hired me, those bearings would have gone into production engines. He let that settle. Then he placed the new bearing, the one from the corrected batch, on the table. This is the replacement. New forging protocol. Corrected cooling rate. 0 defects. Every unit in the batch is clean. The fix cost Hartwell $340,000. The production halt cost $24 million. The crash that didn't happen? That would have cost everything. Not just money. Lives. Families. Children who never see their parents again. Jack looked around the table, meeting every pair of eyes. I know I don't look like the person you'd put in this chair. I know my toolbox has duct tape on it, and my car has 200,000 miles on it, and I don't own a suit. But I'm not here to look the part. I'm here to do the job. And the job is to keep people alive. If that's not enough for this board, then I'll walk out of here right now and go back to my garage in Newark. No hard feelings. But if it is enough, if the work matters more than the wrapper it comes in, then I'd like to stay and keep doing what I was hired to do. He sat down. The room was absolutely still. Robert Ames was staring at the microscopy images. 2 board members had picked up the bearings and were turning them in their hands. A woman at the far end of the table, Dr. Helen Zhao, the board's independent safety advisor, was reading the binder page by page with an expression of deepening gravity. Victor broke the silence. With all due respect, one bearing defect, however dramatic, doesn't justify. It wasn't one, Dr. Zhao said, cutting him off without looking up. According to this data, it was 3 out of 7. A 43% defect rate in a primary load-bearing component of a propulsion system. Victor, if you'd presented me with these numbers a month ago, I would have recommended an immediate program suspension and an FAA notification. The digital systems failed, Dr. Zhao said. She finally looked up. They failed, and this man caught what they missed. That's not an argument against his qualification. That's the strongest argument for it I've ever seen. Robert Ames cleared his throat. I'd like to hear from Sophia. Sophia stood. She didn't speak immediately. She looked at Victor, then at the board, then at Jack. And when she spoke, her voice was steady, but carried an undertone that Jack recognized.
The same tremor he'd felt in her handshake at the coffee shop. Not weakness, vulnerability. The rarest thing a powerful person can show. "I built this company from nothing," she said. "I started in a garage not much different from Jack's. I didn't have credentials. I didn't have connections. I had an idea and the will to execute it. And every step of the way, people told me I wasn't qualified. I was too young, too female, too inexperienced, too risky. If I had listened to those people, Hartwell Technologies wouldn't exist." She placed her hands flat on the table. "Jack Reynolds is the most qualified person in this building for the role I hired him to fill. Not because of a degree, because of what he can do, what he proved he can do. He saved this company from a disaster that none of our systems detected. He did it in his first 2 weeks, and the fact that he did it without a PhD from Stanford doesn't diminish what he did. It amplifies it, because it means there's a kind of knowledge that can't be taught in a classroom. It lives in the hands, in the experience, in the character of a person who has spent their life showing up and doing the work." She looked at Victor. "Victor, you're a brilliant engineer. Your contributions to this company are real and significant. But your complaint isn't about qualifications. It's about control. You don't like that I hired someone outside your chain of command. You don't like that his instincts outperformed your systems. And you don't like that I trusted the man you would have dismissed before he opened his toolbox. That's your problem, not this board's, and not Jack's." Victor's face was granite. His eyes were cold. But for the first time since Jack had known him, Victor Hale had nothing to say. Robert Ames called for a vote. The motion was simple. Retain Jack Reynolds in his current position with full authority as previously authorized by the CEO. 11 in favor, 1 abstention. Victor didn't vote. He gathered his documents, stood, and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "You're making a mistake, Sophia. I've made plenty. This isn't one of them." Victor left. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded, to Jack, like the ending of something. The board members filed out. Several stopped to shake Jack's hand. Dr. Zhao held his grip for an extra second. "Don't let anyone make you doubt what your hands can do," she said. "Yes, ma'am." Then it was just Jack and Sophia in the conference room. Sophia sat down heavily, the first ungraceful movement Jack had ever seen her make. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. "That was close," she said. "That was necessary. Victor's going to resign by end of week. Probably. Good." She opened her eyes. "Jack, what you said in there, about the work mattering more than the wrapper. That's the truest thing anyone's said in this building in the 9 years since I founded this company." "I meant it." "I know you did. That's why it mattered." They sat in silence for a moment. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. The kind that exists between two people who have been through something together and don't need words to acknowledge it. "What now?" Jack asked. "Now we build. The aviation division, the propulsion program, all of it. And we do it the right way. With people like you and Rachel who care more about the work than the politics." "And Victor's position?" "I'll find a new CTO. Someone who understands that being smart isn't the same as being right." Jack nodded. He started packing up the bearings. Sophia watched him, his careful hands placing each one back in the box. The same attention he gave to every task, whether it was a $90 million jet or a retired bus driver's truck. "Jack?" "Yeah?" "Do you remember what you said to me in the hangar that first night, when you tore up the check?" "I remember."
You said some things aren't for sale. Respect, integrity, a man's word. I remember. I've been thinking about that every day since, every single day. And I want you to know, you changed something in me that night. Not just the way I think about business or about people. You changed the way I think about myself. For 20 years, I measured my worth in stock prices and quarterly reports and deals closed. You showed me there's another way to measure, and I'm still learning it. I'm still bad at it, but I'm trying. Jack closed the box. That's all anyone can do, Sophia. Try. Show up and try. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. She smiled. A real one. The kind that reached her eyes and stayed there, not the flash and fade corporate version she wore like armor. Jack saw it and felt something shift in his chest. A warmth that he hadn't felt since Denise. A recognition that he wasn't ready to name, but couldn't deny. I should go pick up my daughter, he said. Of course. Go. He picked up the box and walked to the door. Then he turned back. Sophia, for what it's worth, your parents would be proud of what you did today. Not the board vote, not the business. The way you stood up and told the truth. Your mother cleaned houses so you could have a chance. Your father broke his body in a coal plant so you could build something. What you built is extraordinary. But who you're becoming, that's what they'd be proud of. Sophia's eyes glistened. Not tears, not yet, but close. Closer than the cemetery in Scranton. Closer than the 3 a.m. text. The wall had a crack in it now, and for the first time, she wasn't rushing to repair it. Thank you, Jack. Anytime. He drove to Newark. The Civic rattled and coughed and complained about every pothole, but it carried him home the way it always did. Faithfully, stubbornly, without pretension. Maya was sitting on the porch steps when he pulled in. She had her phone in one hand and a concerned look on her face. Dad, are you okay? I saw something online about Hartwell Technologies. What did you see? Some article about a board meeting and a guy trying to get someone fired. Was that about you? Jack sat down on the steps next to her. It was. What happened? I told the truth, and the truth won. That simple? That simple. Maya leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm proud of you, Dad. I'm proud of you, baby girl. Every day. They sat on the porch as the evening settled over Newark. The streetlights came on one by one. A neighbor waved from across the street. The stray cat that Jack had been secretly feeding for months appeared on the fence and stared at them with yellow eyes. Dad? Yeah? Are you happy? Jack thought about it. He thought about the garage and Earl's truck and the toolbox with duct tape. He thought about the G700 roaring to life at Teterboro. He thought about Rachel in the lab, learning to feel what computers couldn't see. He thought about Sophia kneeling between 2 headstones in Scranton, finding her way back to something she'd lost. He thought about Denise and the photo on his nightstand, and the laugh he couldn't quite remember anymore, but would never stop hearing. Yeah, he said. I think I am. Good. You deserve it. So do you. I know. That's why I'm asking for a raise on my allowance. Jack laughed, the deep, full kind that came from somewhere he'd forgotten existed. Maya grinned and punched his arm the way she always did, and they sat there together on the porch steps of a small house in Newark, a father and daughter who had weathered loss and doubt and the quiet daily courage of ordinary life. Inside, Jack's phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Victor resigned, effective immediately. Thank you for today, for all of it. Jack typed back.
The work speaks for itself. Then a second text from her. Jack, would you and Maya like to have dinner this weekend? Not a business dinner, just dinner. I'd like to meet the girl who raised the man who fixed my jet. Jack showed the text to Maya. She read it twice, then looked at him with Denise's eyes shining bright and a smile that held the entire future in it. Tell her yes, Maya said. You sure? Dad, tell her yes. Jack typed. We'd like that. Maya picks the restaurant. Sophia replied. Deal. I trust her judgment. She learned from the best. Jack put the phone in his pocket.
He looked at his daughter. He looked at the house he'd held together with steady hands and stubborn love. He looked at the Civic in the driveway, 21 years old and still running, still carrying him where he needed to go. Some men measure their lives in stock prices and corner offices and the zeros on a check. Jack Reynolds measured his in the things that couldn't be bought. A daughter who made him laugh. A friend who called when it mattered. Work that kept people safe. And the slow, hard-earned respect of a woman who had forgotten what respect looked like, until a mechanic from Newark walked into her hangar with a duct-tape toolbox and reminded her. He didn't fix Sophia Hartwell the way he fixed engines. He didn't rebuild her the way he rebuilt transmissions. He simply showed up, honest, steady, unbreakable, and let her see that there was another way to live. Not louder, not richer, not more powerful, just truer. And Sophia, for her part, gave Jack something he hadn't allowed himself to want in 6 years. A door to walk through. A place where his gifts mattered on a scale he'd never imagined. A chance to prove that the hands of a working man from Newark could change an industry, save lives, and maybe, in the quiet moments between the work, find something that looked like a second beginning. Not a fairy tale. Jack didn't believe in fairy tales. He believed in showing up. He believed in the weight of a wrench and the truth of a steady hand. He believed that some things, respect, integrity, a father's love, a man's word, were worth more than any check ever written. And he was right. He went inside, washed his hands at the kitchen sink, and started making dinner for his daughter. The furnace rattled. The faucet dripped. The house was small and old and imperfect, but it was full. And that was enough. That had always been enough. Jack Reynolds, a black single dad from Newark, a mechanic with oil under his nails and a toolbox held together with duct tape, had walked into a billionaire's world and come out the other side unchanged. Not because the world hadn't tried to change him. It had. It tried with money and power and doubt, and the quiet cruelty of people who measured worth by what a man wore instead of what he carried inside. It failed, because Jack Reynolds could not be bought, could not be broken, and could not be made into something he was not. And that, more than any engine he ever fixed or any jet he ever brought back to life, was the most powerful thing he ever did.